Hey everyone, this is Arcacia with Patch, Peoria Area Association of Christian Homeschoolers, and we are here tonight with the Stegall family. Stegall. I
Eagle.
know, Stegall. The Stegall family with our family spotlight for this month. So we're going to do a brief introduction of the Stegall family, if I can get that right, and their homeschooling journey to encourage other homeschoolers and to give everybody an idea of what homeschooling looks like, because homeschooling looks different for everybody. So good evening, guys. It's great to have you.
Hi, thanks for having us.
Yeah.
And it is Thomas and Teresa Stegall. And so why don't you guys just give us a brief introduction of who you guys are and your family?
Well, so Teresa and I are coming up on 20 years of being married. And we have a 6-year-old daughter, Selah, and a 4-year-old son, Graham. And Teresa's been homeschooling with them since the very beginning. And I work for Samaritan Ministries and more recently started working from home more. So worked out pretty nice. And we've really appreciated the support of other homeschoolers in the area. I was really kind of introduced to other homeschool families through work. Where I work, there's a large number of families there that are homeschoolers, and that was for us kind of a nice introduction into the community and the community's efforts to engage in homeschooling. So that's been great for us, just kind of getting started in this endeavor.
Oh, that's great. So, were you guys always interested in homeschooling, or has your opinion changed over time and you kind of morphed into homeschooling?
I'll let you answer that one.
Um, we have always thought that we would homeschool our kids. If you heard what he said, we were married about 14 years before we had kids. But we had a lot of time to kind of think about what we would do if we ever had kids and just watch the culture around us, watch what was going on in schools, and think about our school experience and what we would have liked, how we would have liked each to have been different. Like he went to a public school his whole life. I went to a private Christian school up until 8th grade and then went to a public school. So we just had a lot of school experience that we, I don't know, just felt like homeschooling could do a lot better than
Yeah.
that. And also like different learning styles. The biggest thing for me when we started learning about homeschool was that he is brilliant. He loves to read to learn. But in the school system did very poorly because he didn't like having to jump through all the hoops. And
Right.
I got like straight A's. And then I finished school thinking, I don't know anything. Like, I'm really ignorant. And he's like explaining stuff to me. And so I just kind of wanted to balance that experience, to be able to tailor school to a kid's learning style. To really help them to excel, to learn how to self-educate, to feel like they finished their school and actually took something away from it.
Right.
Yeah. So we've always kind of been thinking about that over the years.
Oh, that's great.
And I had met, in my youth, I had met a few people that were homeschooled, and I was thoroughly impressed, not only with their education, but the relationship they had with their parents and their family was absolutely foreign to me. And it was very distinct and very positive, but very unique and different from anything I had ever experienced or observed before. And so it spoke very well to some of the intangibles of homeschooling beyond just education itself.
So you had a little bit of an exposure to homeschooling before you guys started homeschooling.
Yeah.
A little bit.
All right. What was your guys' biggest fear about homeschooling? Because we all have our fears. I know my biggest fear when I started homeschooling was I was going to somehow mess them up. And that fear actually came back when I graduated my oldest, because I'm like, oh no, now it's like make it or break it time. And she's going off to college. And what if I did something or did not do something? So what was your guys' biggest fear about homeschooling?
I think for me, starting as I was starting to learn about it, was just feeling unsure how I would know if my kid was on track. Like, just like I don't know what age they're supposed to be able to do addition and subtraction, or what age they're supposed to be able to read at. So that was one of my biggest fears. But then I started just looking at a lot of curriculum and like going to Patch Convention and looking through the vendor hall, looking at all the different curriculums. I would just flip to like the 1st grade and 2nd grade books and read the index. Like, oh, okay, like we could probably be at these points at this point in time. And then realizing I could just do that every year, scan the curriculum table of contents and get a sense of like where we're supposed to be by the end of the year. Because I knew, like, for me, a lot of the canned curriculum just doesn't resonate, and I like to kind of piece together and do some of my own things. So I was worried that, in doing some things more independently, that I would miss big things that they were supposed to do. So, yeah.
I like the fact about homeschooling too, is that just our kids naturally progress with their character and with their age and with what they're learning about. And it just is a natural progression that they're independent learners. They really are. And it really just, it's just a great experience.
That's okay. I think I had to kind of get over that sense of like they had to be at a certain point at a certain time, but that it's okay for them to be independent. Another thing that I had really early on with like a 3 and 4-year-old, because I'm not a trained educator. I'm an accountant, and I've never really had a lot of experience with kids. And so when my kids were really little, I was worried that they would never sit still and never listen, and that we just would never get anything done. So that was a fear of mine too, but it has helped as they've matured. And also, like, I just like to observe other people. When I see other people teach, I'll like just observe everything I can to be like, oh, this is what they use to keep the kids' attention. This is how they talk to try to like keep them focused or teach them to obey and sit still. So
Yeah, because we are customizing it to where each of the children are at, and not not taking the not treating them like cattle. We're just recognizing where each child is at, and oftentimes speaking their language, or focusing on drawing them into the learning process by what they're interested in. It really has helped overcome some of those concerns. And I really didn't have any concerns going into it. I know a lot of people are kind of fearful. There's this myth out there that, oh, well, if your kids don't spend their day around 100 other kids, then they're going to be poorly socialized. When in fact, all of my experiences with children that have been homeschooled, it's exactly the opposite. They're partially probably because of that sense of independent learning and ownership in their own education.
Right.
They mature faster. They're far more polite. They interact more. I would say there's more of a balance of them interacting with other adults versus just being surrounded by other children. So they're learning from other adults. So my experience has been consistently that they're by and large far more mature on average than the typical child that I grew up with in public school.
Right. And kids just learn better learning at their own pace and not having those huge expectations on them. So the great homeschooling is great. So you guys kind of talked a little bit about this, but how did you combat some of those fears that you had with homeschooling?
Yeah, just kind of what I said before, just starting to review some curriculum to help me get a sense of like what I should generally, be progressing towards. And also realizing that there didn't have to be cookie cutter, things like that.
I think, yeah. So for my work, I used to attend homeschool conventions quite often, very large ones, and learned very early on that there's a lot of different approaches, and each of them have their strengths and appeals. And it made it very clear there isn't one right way to do it. There are several good ways to do it. And so we sought out what we thought would be the best fit for our children. But I would say one of the things that we did to kind of help overcome those concerns was that we engaged with other homeschoolers, engaged with the homeschool community to learn from other people that were further down the road than we were in this process. And that, I think, has made all the difference.
That's true. That's true. And then another thing that you guys have touched on is that cookie cutter approach. I mean, that's one thing that we always have to struggle with, at least me as being a public schooler. I was a public school, my husband was public schooled, and that's all we knew. Is we had that philosophy that we think, oh, well, all kids have to be meshed and formed and molded into one thing. And we don't realize that each individual kid has their own gifts and their own character and their own special talents. And that's what homeschooling is really great about, is flourishing those.
Yeah. That's one thing I like about convention too, is that you can get a lot of different homeschooling perspectives. So you don't have to say, oh, it always has to be this curriculum, or it always has to be classical, or it always has to be Charlotte Mason, or it always has to be whatever. Like, you could, if it wasn't working for your kid, you could switch course midstream
Mhm.
to pick up on something else that clicks better with your kid. And so that's one thing that I really love about it, is just knowing that I can switch course if I need to, just to make it work for my kid.
Definitely. I definitely give parents permission to do that. I learned the hard way. There was a curriculum that I bought at a convention. I thought, oh, we were getting kind of tired of our history. I'm like, we needed something fresh and new. So I bought this awesome curriculum. So I thought, and we started it, and there was literally crying every single
Oh,
day by either my kids or myself. But I'm like, no, we got to finish it. We got to finish it. And I think we might have been like 2 months into it. I'm like, why in the world am I making my kids finish something that they do not enjoy? And so
yeah.
it just kind of was a light bulb moment for me that we could pack it away and not have to finish it and find something that we do enjoy.
Yeah. Yep.
So what is your guys' homeschooling philosophy?
Um,
I would say, you know, kind of with what we've said already, that we really focused on um, kind of learner-based focus, that rather than charting a course and then just forcing the child into that pathway, um, we kind of look at where they're at, and so we look at whether it's a curriculum or our schedule in the day. So we've got a daughter who is like me. She is a nighttime person. She's not a morning person. And then we have my son who is just like Teresa and is a morning person. And so whether it's scheduling um, time to study or lessons, or whether it's doing chores around the house, we've been very intentional to recognize that God has created each of them differently.
Mhm.
So my daughter absolutely loves to read. She's a voracious reader. And at 6, she's, I don't know, probably close to fourth grade reading right now, maybe
probably
third,
fourth,
third. But
yeah.
she can't get enough of books.
Mhm.
So we're, you know, that becomes an avenue to where we can get her to learn a lot of other things just through her desire to reading. Whereas our son, is now the age when she had already developed that interest in reading.
Right.
He just doesn't have that interest. And so we recognize, rather than trying to force it on him, just trying to figure out um, where we can make use of his interest to be like his sister, to pick up some things kind of organically without even lessons, and then build lessons on top of that. I think has been part of your approach.
Yeah. hmm yeah, I think like him talking about the just being able to tailor it to each individual child, that was what we wanted to do from the beginning. So as I spent some time in the last couple of years leading up to starting officially school, I would look into different philosophies, and Charlotte Mason's philosophy has really resonated with me right now. Where one of the main like tenets is that children are persons. Each child is born unique, a person designed by God, has its own unique bent. So to be able to treat them in that way is a big part of what I would consider my philosophy. Like one of the things I want to do is inspire them towards the joy of
Right.
learning. So that was another Charlotte Mason thing where they really encourage you to spend lots and lots of time outside, because time outside in God's creation is going to open up and awaken a child's heart with the desire and inspiration and motivation to learn. And so those are some of the big, like the key things in my philosophy. One thing that we've recently kind of uh, that has really stuck out to me in some of the Charlotte Mason stuff I've been reading is just the idea that all education really comes from God. You know, you can't really separate like secular and Christian education, because God has enabled us to learn and created even people who aren't Christians. Like he's created people with that inclination and desire and curiosity to be able to learn. So all education comes from the Holy Spirit, which has been really encouraging, because I can, you know, as a teacher can think, I've got to drill this in, I've got to get them to learn this, you know, but really like to leave that open to the Holy Spirit to be able to open their eyes and teach them and guide them as they're learning has been helpful too. So I think the biggest thing of my philosophy would just be trying to recognize that they're individual people, and then letting God, you know, show us how they're going to develop instead of pushing them into a certain hole.
I think another thing that's been part of our philosophy right from the beginning has been an intentionality to recognize that all of life, day in and day out, exposure to life is a learning opportunity for our children. So we go out in the backyard and we spend some time out there together, and from that, automatically questions come. You know, they
Right.
see a bird and they ask questions about the bird, or they ask questions about the flowers and how they grow, how they work. Uh, Questions like that. We have a small home-based business, and so we talk about business concepts of how we serve other people and things of that nature. And each of those creates just natural learning opportunities that aren't a structured, okay, let's sit down for an hour and focus on a topic where they're struggling to keep their focus on the topic at hand. Instead, we're just engaging them in the opportunities as they arise throughout our lives daily. And it's not, there is the structured time, but outside of that, we're she does an excellent job of seeing teaching opportunities in every moment of life, whether
Right.
it's we're driving, you know, on the road to a destination that's 2 hours away. We can engage them in conversation and teach them things that otherwise would have been incorporated into a lesson anyway.
Exactly. Yep, and I know for us, we started off actually homeschooling out of fear. We've been homeschooling since the beginning, since our oldest, who is now 23, since she was in kindergarten. And my husband, he's like, well, there's lots of stuff going on in the school system, and you know, I don't want her to be bullied, and so he's like, oh, we should homeschool. And that's how we started off, and we were into it a couple of years. And I always had the philosophy, well, I take it year by year. We'll see what we do this year. That changed about 2 or 3 years into our homeschooling journey. It became more of a, you know, this is our family, this is our lifestyle, this is, you know, home discipleship, this is who we are. And every part of our day is a learning experience. It's not just the book learning, you know, how we engage with our world, how our character training, how we engage with people, you know, job training. I have some high schoolers right now that are having jobs outside the home. So I mean, it's all engaging, and that's what I like best about homeschooling. And that's how I feel how our homeschooling philosophy is kind of morphed over time. Is it started out of fear, but then moved into trust and trusting God and realizing that this is just the lifestyle that He has chosen for us and that we're living.
Yeah, between the character development, the behaviors they would otherwise be learning from other children,
Mhm.
the public curriculum, I mean, all of those things. I'm so thankful that we are homeschooling, because I see families that are combating those things with their children, and it's
Right.
I get the sense they feel like they're swimming against the stream, because they get just a few hours with their children, whereas their children are just day long learning things that they have to often teach in contrary to. You know?
Right.
So the dividends of homeschooling for us have just been uh, impossible to estimate. It's
Right.
been
It's definitely a blessing that we get to homeschool our kids. So, what has been your favorite part about homeschooling?
I think just seeing the kids develop, just seeing their enthusiasm at times for different things, you know, and starting to see like that family culture. I think he talked about that he would observe in other homeschool families is now they're still really little, so I feel like it's going to be a while before we
Right.
really start to see that, but just little glimpses of it start coming, you know, it's like, oh, this is our family culture. And I think that some of those things we wouldn't have if we were separated for a
Right.
large day. So that's probably one of my favorite things.
I think mine has been the relationship.
Yeah.
Both my parents worked full time. I went to public school my whole life. And in contrast to my experience, when our kids learn something new and the light bulb goes on and they get it,
Hmm.
it's our face that's looking back at that moment.
Hmm.
Those happen all the time. And they're having those light bulb moments with us. And I love that.
That's exciting. So, one final question for you guys. You mentioned your kids are still on the younger side, so you have a lot of time left to homeschool. So, what are you looking forward to as you continue your homeschooling journey?
Let's see. Some more of that like family culture sort of stuff to grow. And some of the things I was thinking of was like, we would like to encourage entrepreneurship. So that's just something that I'm looking forward to, finding areas where they can start to do that and just start to see them develop according to their own passions, their own interests. Our daughter, he mentioned she loves to read, but she loves animals, she loves horses. And our son, just anything cars, and so it's just kind of fun to think about where their passions and interests could lead, and then how could they eventually become entrepreneurs and serve in their community within those skills that they have and their passions. So that's one of the things I'm looking forward to watching develop and helping them to. I don't know. I just feel like in the school system, we all just kind of followed the same track, and I never really knew what I wanted to do with my life. And I think if I had a homeschool situation, that maybe I would have had a little more guidance and a little more understanding of my interests and my passions and my abilities. So I would have probably saved a lot of time in college, going for a degree that I don't really love. So I'm just excited to do that differently for my kids, to be able to allow them to develop according to their passions, and then hopefully be on a career path or start their own business or something that they just love.
Mhm.
I think for me, it's so, well, I went to a large public school where we do 1 to 2 field trips a year. And because of the logistics of busing people to kids, take 500 kids to one location and then bring them back, it would take all day to just spend 2 hours somewhere. And of course, 500 kids, the individual kids don't get to see a whole lot in that span of 2 hours. So I'm looking forward to, and we've enjoyed already, to making life lessons, making school about going out and learning and seeing and doing. And so field trips are a regular sort of thing.
Mhm.
Would be last year we went to Colorado for a vacation. But we make use of those opportunities to engage in them with learning. When we went for hiking, we went hiking through the mountains, and that led to lots of questions for weeks and weeks later, and different interests. They're now doing hiking, looking at flowers, and some of that interest, I think, in the children was sparked by seeing such different things in the mountains. Just being able to explore. So for me, travel, getting them
Mhm.
to see the world, and kind of making what we experience as kind of special field trips in school, to make that a regular part of their life and their
Yeah,
learning.
I can agree with that, Thomas, because I'm looking forward to, we're actually going to be taking our family to Washington, D.C. this summer. And we're going to be doing a lot of the museums and monuments and stuff and spending some time there in D.C. and Virginia. And our first flying as a family. So that's one of the things I'm looking forward to, is just having that, sharing that experience with my kids. And, my second youngest, who is 8 right now, she's actually learning a lot about the American government. We're doing a state history program. And so I think that this is really she's already excited about some of the things that we've been talking about in history that she gets to see in person. So it's really great.
Yeah, our kids are a little bit young to probably remember what we've done so far long term. But I am looking forward to when they get to that age where, when we go to have these trips, they'll be memorable trips for them.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I want to thank you guys, Thomas and Teresa Stegall. It's been a long day. Thomas and Teresa Stegall, for joining us tonight with our Patch Family Spotlight. And again, if anybody else is interested in being a Patch Family Spotlight, you can. You just need to send us an email or respond to us on Facebook or Instagram. We get those messages too, and we would love to sit down with you guys and find out a little bit about your family and share it with others. So thanks, guys, for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.